Welcome to episode 42 of Mitolife Radio. I'm your host, Matt Blackburn, and today I'm speaking with Josh Rubin for the second time. He is the creator, along with his wife, of the RTN Approach called Restoration Thyroid Nutrition. And in this interview, it's cool because we do talk about a lot of specifics. We talk about iron, cholesterol, thyroid, the adrenals, but this interview is largely just an overview of Josh's approach to health and how he works with clients. And I really like the simplicity of it. I like advanced stuff, but that's later on, and I do understand the importance of foundational work. And that's really what Josh is educating people about, Josh and his wife Jeannie, about how to bring the body back into balance in a very logical way by taking the burden off the adrenals, allowing the liver to store glycogen so that the liver can convert thyroid hormone, T4 to T3, and your body can produce more energy in every cell throughout the body, which is total body health. If you actually increase ATP production in the cells, but you need thyroid hormone to do that. So it's kind of like all these downstream effects, but it all comes back to regulating your blood sugar with food frequency, carbs and protein with each meal. And I like Josh with his approach of, find what works for you. Because I always get asked, what do you recommend I eat? And I think everyone's stuck in this diet mentality. What's the best diet for everybody? What are the best superfoods, etc.? And I think that's really missing the point of health. The point of health is to find what works for you at that time. And maybe coffee didn't work for you in the past and it will work for you now. Or oats, sprouted gluten-free oats, maybe those didn't work for you before and they will now. Things kind of change on an individual level for us as far as what we can eat. And a lot of the questions I get from clients and people that follow my work is allergies. What do you recommend to, improve this allergy? Or I'm allergic to X, I'm allergic to meat, I can't eat it, I'm allergic to dairy, lactose intolerance. And one of my favorite things about Josh is that he teaches people that if you cannot digest carbs, proteins, and fats together in one meal, then you got problems. Because people are all about food combining and kind of micromanaging their health. And I can't eat this and I can't eat that. Well, what if your allergies or your intolerance to food isn't the food? What if it's actually you? And usually that's the case. So Josh has awesome education on Instagram. He has an awesome YouTube, East West Healing, his website, eastwesthealing.com. And it's just really basic stuff. It's complex if you want to get into that. And there's a breathing component, nose breathing. Health is not just food, obviously. It's sleep, relationships, and Josh talks about all that stuff. But what a lot of people are missing, especially in the keto carnivore community, is thyroid health. And if you're restricting sugar, or if you're vegan and you're restricting protein, because there's no protein in plants, then your thyroid is not going to function. Not just production, but conversion, transport, and utilization. Josh educates people, you don't have a thyroid production problem. Your thyroid is producing. You have thyroid hormone being made. But the question is, people never take it to the next step, similar with the water conversation. They never take it to the next step of acid rain. Or with the plants, with NPK. Just one more step, and you get into this whole new area. And same thing with thyroid hormone. It's not just making it, it's converting it, which most people don't do because they're chronically stressed because they're restricting sugar, the primary fuel of the body, and they're not transporting it, and it's not getting into the cell because polyunsaturated fats, specifically omega-3 DHEA, which is a poison in a concentrated dose like algae oil, that blunts the ability of sugar to enter the cell. And thyroid hormone, which causes insulin resistance and can lead to autoimmune diseases, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, chronic fatigue, adrenal fatigue. I mean, you name it. Polyunsaturated fatty acids cause every disease, but specifically cancer. So algae oil targets the cancer industry. It feeds that industry, actually. So that's why I created the product called PUFA Protect, which is a vitamin E extract. And the form that the body prefers is D-alpha tocopherol. That's why the liver makes alpha TTP enzyme to break down that specific one form of vitamin E out of the 8. That is the one that the liver prefers. And that is the one that actually helps to neutralize all of the effects, all of the downstream effects that polyunsaturated fatty acids have on the cell. So Josh actually has some great YouTube videos. He even has one on vitamin E on his YouTube channel, East West Healing, that's really great. Vitamin E is such an affordable supplement, and it's so effective. Even if you just took one capsule, 400 IUs a day, it's incredible. And you can get it from food, and people have varying opinions on supplements. Josh and I actually differ quite a bit on supplements, but that's okay. No one's going to agree on everything, and that's why I have this show, is to share multiple different perspectives with you. But Josh and I agree on most things, and especially that most people have iron overload. I love in the interview that he says that most people are under eating protein. Most people are protein deficient. And if you look at the vegan propaganda, a lot of them will say that we're getting too much protein. There's books written about this. And it increases ammonia, and it'll cause kidney disease, and all these scare things, and stop the protein and cut back on protein, and it's not a required nutrient. That's insane to me. That's absolutely insane, because the body requires protein to make enzymes, to make neurotransmitters, not only to repair the muscle tissue and tissue in general for regeneration, but actually to make the primary substances of life, the spark plugs of life. I sell enzymes. I sell systemic and digestive, and most people are enzyme deficient, even if they're eating fruits and vegetables, because how long were they sitting at the store? So combine that, not eating fresh off the tree from your own garden in a greenhouse with filtered water, enzyme deficient produce, combine that with protein deficiency, and you got a real problem. And so this is where we see accelerated aging. And of course, you stack onto this drinking hard water, bathing in hard water, bathing in acid rain, drinking sulfuric and nitric acids. All of these things combine. And so for the last 10 years, I've been really passionate about connecting all of these dots. And people like Josh Rubin are awesome, because he's introduced me to a lot of ideas that I was not aware of before. And so whether we agree on everything or not doesn't matter, because we agree on the foundational stuff. And that's what's going to help people. It's all about helping people get back to balance. And there's so many people trying to sell you a 10-day transformational green juice MLM cleanse where you have to spend $300 for 10 days on NPK fertilizer grown acid rain green powders, which is just ridiculous, and you're starving yourself of sugar. Don't do keto. It's not worth it. You're not worth it. And I work with so many clients, Josh does as well, where ketogenic people break down, very ill, almost hospital bedridden. I was there. I believe Josh was there. Keith Deering, a lot of the people I've interviewed. Ketogenic diet, restricting sugar is not smart, and it will catch up with you, because physiologically wise, the body runs on carbohydrate. It can't run on anything else long term. And that's what Josh and I talk about, long-term health. If you go carnivore and you feel awesome, great. You feel awesome when you make a change. That's what Josh says. But wait 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And these long-term experiments are so deleterious for health, and they're very dangerous, actually. It's fine to do short-term experiments, I believe, and play with supplementation and different things. But long term, let's just get back to balance. Let's get back to consuming animal products in high amounts, lots of saturated fats, lots of fruit and animal protein, and just get a balanced diet. But I would recommend you restrict nuts, seeds, legumes, and vegetables and grains unless they're sprouted and get the highest quality. I do really well on sourdough, getting back to doing what works for you, right? Finding what works for your body. So anyway, that's enough of my ranting. Here is Josh Rubin. Mr. Josh Rubin, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, my friend. How's it going?
It's awesome. Yeah, that first interview with you, I think you were my third or fourth interview.
Yeah.
People really enjoyed that one. And
Great.
A lot of people are struggling with, as you know, weight loss, weight gain, fatigue, depression, just a laundry list. But I like your RTN approach, restoration thyroid nutrition, because it's a good starting place. And then from there, if they want to get into supplementation and protocols and more advanced things, but your RTN is like a starting point, right?
For some, it's a lifestyle. You know, I think, you said some people are experiencing these issues. I think everyone is, right? We're living in a society that's in complete chaos. And that's really, there's no way to explain it any differently, whether I haven't watched the news in honestly 12 years. Whether you watch the news, you get involved in politics, which is one of the reasons why we just moved to Idaho, because the politics of California are just ass backward. They're not for the people. Yeah. So, if you look at our society on that level, if you look at it even down to the nutritional level, because as above, so below, right? There's no difference. It's like you look at like naturopathy in Western medicine. There's no difference in it. They're just using supplements in labs versus medications. So when you look at politics, you look at everything below, and you look at nutrition, everyone is so confused. I get messages every day. We talk to people every day, and people just don't know what direction to go in, right? Because I think we're focusing on the wrong things. And of course, I say I a lot because I'm speaking for myself and my approach in the 20 years that I have, and I'm not saying like our word is bond, but I'm just sharing what has worked for a lot of people that come in so confused because everyone's chasing the destination, right? Everyone wants to get there, which is health. And they think if they get there, they're going to be happy. They're going to be content. They're going to be worthy. They're going to be lovable. The list goes on, right? The problem is, and there's a lot of problems, you focus on what you have to do and you focus on what you want versus what the body needs. So you miss everything in between. You miss all the lessons, all the beauty, all the ups and downs, everything. And that's why people never get the carrot that they're chasing. They never learn about themselves. Like I've always said, if you study the work of Gabor Mate, he's someone that we really enjoy. He talks about trauma and stress as a separation of self. And the more stress you have and the more trauma you have, there's more separation of self. So true healing is the marriage, or what's a good word for this? The process of you coming back into self. That's what healing is all about, right? Mm-hmm. It's learning how to feel again, how to be again, learning what you want, what your belief systems are, because we grow up and our parents kind of teach us what our belief systems are. And society teaches us what our belief systems are. I'm not saying you have to be an anarchist, but it's like, it's redefining who you are. And that's what we're trying to do with people and saying, stop focusing on the destination. Stop focusing on your symptoms. Yes, symptoms are important because they teach us about our body. They teach us to listen. We can either react mindlessly, chase, or we can respond mindfully and say, what am I not doing? How am I not living? How am I not supporting my body in all the different ways? And that's what it's really teaching us. And I think, unfortunately, people don't look at it that way and they react and they chase. So we're trying to get people back to say, I'm human. I need to feel, I need to think for myself. I need to create a way of living to support my physiology, because that is the most important thing to do. Because once we do that, then we reconnect with ourselves. We learn how we want to live, what we want to feel, what we want to read, etc. You know, and I think it's powerful. It goes back to a principle one of my old mentors, Paul Chek, taught me, honestly, 20 years ago. And he called it the I, we, all principle. And if you think of a tree, right, you have to, or a bush, whatever you want to call it, you plant the seed in the soil. That is your I. That is you, right? You need to water that and nurture it to grow the root, to the roots, or the trunk, whatever you want to call it, right? I don't know the technical word for
branches.
It. Yeah, branches. Not even the branches, but I see what you're saying.
The
trunk, you know, whatever you call it. That is your we. Your we can only be as strong as your I, and your we is like a relationship with my wife, or a relationship with a friend, or a relationship with coworkers, or you know, etc. Your all is the branches and the trees. That is your family. That is your business. That is your group of friends. So your we and all can only be as strong as your I. But we always focus on the all and the we. I want to get healthy. I want to feel loved. I want to get any needs met through these people, these things. But we forget about the I. It's scary, but that's what we're doing with our nutrition, is getting people back to saying it doesn't have to be complex, because it isn't complex, you know? It doesn't have to be fearful. It has to, it's a beautiful process, and it's simple. Let's just get back to being human and saying, let's eat. It's like I posted the other day about eating breakfast when you wake up, and everyone's asking me for research about it. Like, that's the state of our industry. Like, I have to show research to show that it's important to eat breakfast in the morning. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's the show me the study. I get that every day.
Yeah,
it's I really love all that. That was great. I like that you said it doesn't have to be complex. And yeah, it seems like most people, like, unless it's like you or I, where we devoted our life to studying and, you know, experiencing health, like, you know, really reading the books and applying the knowledge. It's for someone that's just working 9 to 5, or, you know, has a different career path. I see so many people just break down. Like my brother's friend, I mean, don't want to name names, but just cancer has come up out of nowhere, you know, living in an apartment, getting slammed with EMFs, and who knows the cause, but it was likely multiple causes. Right. And it's just sad to me, because at the same time, there's, as you talked a lot about supplements, and that's been my primary area of study, is like supplementation. I have my own, you know, line of supplements, as you see, Mitolife, but I don't use that as like a foundation for health. I say, you know, have the other stuff and then add these in, it'll help.
Yeah.
But I think people are going to the supplements first. I like that you talked a lot about that. So
they are, you know why? Because, and I say this with 100% compassion, because I know we all have a story, and I know it's confusing and it's scary, but we're lazy. Our society is a hunk. They're lazy. You know, we don't want to drive anywhere anymore. We don't want to get out of our car. We have drive-thrus. We can order Amazon. We don't have to go to a store and shop anymore. Like, malls are going to be obsolete in 10 years. You know, you're going to have all these empty buildings. You see it now, right? You see what closed near me recently, like Toys R Us. Like, I remember going to Toys R Us as a kid. They all closed. Why did they all close? Because of Amazon, right? So we have a society that's super lazy, and it's easy. This goes back to the foundation of what I said. It's easy to take a supplement. It's easy to turn on red light therapy. It's easy to do this stuff. And I'm not saying it's not beneficial. They're tools. I believe they're tools. Do I think everyone needs every single tool? No. It's more overload. It's more chaos. But it's easy to do that and blame symptoms instead of saying, what am I not doing? What do I need to change? How do I need to change how I'm living, how I'm sleeping, how I'm eating, how I'm breathing, how I'm thinking? What do I need to change during the day? Because how I feel is a representation of all of that. You cannot blame food. You cannot blame people. You cannot blame God. You are the way you are because of you, the choices you make every single day. So you have a choice to wake up and say, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to do things to create health. Is it easy? No. Is it challenging? Sure. Is it confusing? Yeah. You're stepping outside your comfort zone, but you have that choice. And that's the most important thing to remember. And when you take a supplement without really doing that, you're giving your power away. Now, if you create that nutritional foundation, if you change your patterns of how you sleep, if you hydrate yourself, if you get outside like a human being should and get in the sun and not say I'm vitamin D deficient, right? You're vitamin D deficient because you never go outside. It's simple. If you do those things and the foundation's there, then if you need a supplement, take a supplement, right? But don't just go, I'm deficient, I need it. Of course you're deficient. You're deficient in everything because you're deficient in life.
I love that. That's going to be the soundbite. That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. And I think you've been talking about vitamin D in relationship to magnesium, and I didn't see that connection for a while. And that's where you and I really jive. And I appreciate watching your posts because you're really into minerals too. And iron, and you've been donating blood regularly. You're actually beating me. I only did it once. I'm overdue, but yeah, your transferrin was a little high, and there's a whole way to read that full Monty iron panel, right? Yeah. Where I'm still kind of learning how to do, but you've been consulting people with that. That's kind of complex to know how each thing works. And,
the bottom line is though, I'm not saying, I think most men should be donating blood, because we can't get rid of that iron. Now, I'm not saying like just go willy-nilly start doing this stuff. You need to know what's going on with your physiology. And I had a conversation yesterday with someone. Like if you're depleted already and you have adrenal fatigue, Hashimoto's, immune system issues, and your nutritional foundation isn't there, I wouldn't go give blood. Build the foundation first. Right? It's almost like you need to recharge your battery before you use it again. You have to do that because when you donate blood, there can be fatigue. Your body has to replenish the red blood cells that were given away, right? And it's harder to do that when you don't have the nutrients, when you don't have the battery, supply to do that. So it's a process, and there's always a totem pole of what should be done. So I just want to say that. But I go every 2 months. Yes, my ferritin was really high, and that's why I go every 2 months. And I've been going every 2 months for a while, plus doing an iron protocol with supplements to help regulate that. And it's been working great. And I love donating blood, because I'm helping other people, but usually like the day or two after, I feel amazing. I could eat like a horse. I love that. And I could drink tons of water, and I just feel so energetic.
Yeah, Morley talks about the EPO, the erythropoietin, that you get that boost, and it's like that doping effect.
It's awesome. It's cool. But most men can't excrete iron. We don't bleed, and that's the only way you can excrete iron. And if we come from a background of eating a lot of fortified processed foods, which most of us do, whether we're formula fed or whatever it may be, you're tucking away a lot of iron. And this is why you see men getting Parkinson's more and all these different diseases. So donating blood for most men is beneficial. I say every 2 months because that's the allotted time they allow you to do it. You can't go any sooner. They won't let you. It takes time to build up those red blood cells, and they prick your finger to test your hemoglobin before to make sure, you have red blood cells to give, or you have too many, which means your blood is thick. We can't do it. Now, that'll happen because of usually some sort of genetic issue, or because you're taking high doses of specific steroids, and that's why they kind of say we can't donate, even though you answer 1,000 questions every time you go in.
I thought that was an aspirin deficiency.
Yeah. They ask you if you've taken aspirin in the past 2 days, because of course.
Blood thinner.
Yeah. So for most men, it's beneficial, but I think creating that foundation first is key. And then doing the full panel. Where am I at? How often should I do it? Do I need to be doing it? And you can decide between just a regular blood draw or a double red, which is, they take double the amount, but they push the plasma and the fluids back in.
Interesting.
But you can only go every 4 months because you sit for 40 minutes. So they're taking more.
Got it. Okay. And
so it's like a double whammy. Yeah. It's like a double whammy.
Interesting. Yeah. A woman on Instagram messaged me. She's like, I get lightheaded after I give blood and I almost faint. I'm like, don't do it. Like rebuild with meat and, rebuild your system before you get into the iron thing. But also I like
most women that are cycling, not bike, meaning like menstrual cycle, should not really donate blood. If anything, 1 to 2 times a year, but even then that can be risky because so many women have cycle issues. And if you bleed every month, it's hard to become iron overloaded. But could there be a balance in magnesium or a balance imbalance with copper and vitamin A? Sure. And that's kind of how you work with women, is with the copper, the vitamin A, and the magnesium to create that metabolic balance in relation to iron. Menopausal women, typically you stop bleeding, so you're going to start tucking away iron. This is why a lot of women, when they hit menopause, start having a lot of problems, right? So women that are in menopause and not bleeding can start giving blood every 2 months, right? Same thing as men.
What was that iron book you recommended? You mentioned it a few times. Like your favorite one?
Well, there's two that are good.
Nice. Okay. Exposing the Hidden Dangers of Iron and Iron, the Most Toxic Metal.
Yeah.
I'm going to get those.
Yeah, they're good. And there's not a lot out there on it, unfortunately. They just test ferritin, or they just test iron, or they just test, et cetera. And then you have this whole thing going around right now that vitamin A is toxic and it creates autoimmune issues and yada, yada, yada. And that's great. Whatever. I agree that the plant source can be toxic. I believe that the animal source is not toxic, but I also know that any vitamin A, even synthetic, right? Because there's a huge difference between plant, animal, and synthetic. Synthetic is toxic, but the only way you could truly become toxic in vitamin A is if you take like 30,000 IU a day or eating that much for a month. Then you become toxic, right?
Yeah. I remember some vegan educator was like, take 50,000 IUs for 3 days straight to wipe out viruses. It's like vitamin A is an antiviral. Yeah. I'm like, why not just eat a ton of butter and ghee and raw milk?
Yeah. So it plays a huge role with copper and iron metabolism, and it is beneficial. And there's a few ways to get it. Animal source, of course, but and it's a catch-22 because, of course, you can eat liver, you can take liver capsules. The problem is liver is really high in copper. So there's some people based on the lab that don't need the copper, and if they get excess copper, it can actually be toxic. Right. So then, and this is kind of against the grain a little bit, with those people, you would have to actually use like a tablespoon of cod liver oil a day, right, to get the vitamin A that they need for that period of time. So it's a little, but you have to look at the diet they're eating. If they're eating a high saturated, low unsaturated fat diet, that small amount of unsaturated fats isn't going to make or break them because they're getting the benefit of the vitamin A. So it's always individualized. That's why we can't always say this is good and this is bad. We have to look at the person that's in front of us and say what's going on physiologically, but always create that foundation first. And I always say that because for a lot of people, if you create the foundation and you change your life a little bit and you eat differently, you might get to a point where you don't need any supplements, right? Because the body is nature. You can't outsmart nature. The body is always trying to create health, and symptoms are your body's way of compensating and still trying to create health. So if you support it and you change the environment, it's going to create health, and maybe you don't need a supplement. You save time, energy, you save many things, right?
Yeah, I love it. And I think you've seen I'm a huge fan of magnesium bicarbonate and Shilajit. My friend Matthew just spent the night here, and he's been working for Pristine Hydro for like 8 years. And they've just studied the biogeochemical cycles. And Geoff Lawton, you might have seen me post like him talk about soil health. And I mean, a lot of things are different, but I think like it's more advanced to get there. I think most people don't even want to be that advanced, right? If they just want to live where they have relatively good energy and they live, I guess, because I want to live a little longer. I go the extra mile.
Yeah. I mean, soils are super depleted, for many reasons. Genetic modified crops, pesticides, herbicides, the list goes on. So it's hard to get even selenium from food nowadays. Everyone's like, we should eat nuts. I think it's Brazil nuts has a lot of selenium. But honestly, it doesn't have a lot of selenium. It's got selenium in it. You know what I mean? So there's other better sources. But yeah, it is. Some things are hard to get in our food because our soil is so depleted. That's why eating organic or biodynamic is better, because you are at least going to get some. But I think a lot of people start looking into this and they read, we'll say selenium, for example. It's important for thyroid health, so I'm going to take it. That's not what it really means. It means your body needs it, but we should be able to get it from our food a lot of the time, but like I said, if you've created that foundation, and which is what we kind of teach people, and if you do a lab and you're still deficient, then you might think about, hey, take it for a little bit of time, but you have that foundation now, so you'll be able to go off it, right? I just think people are going the other way around, and next thing you know, they have a cabinet full of 40 supplements and they have to take every one of them, and that's not a way to live.
I've seen some Dave Asprey pictures where his hand's just full of like 100 pills.
He's just a pinprick, he's just an experimenter. He'll take SARMs, he'll take testosterone, he'll take supplements, because it's that whole, I don't even know what to call it.
Biohacking. Biohacking.
Yeah, I guess I don't really follow it. I don't really follow any of those people, just because it's just not, I don't have the time. But it's like the whole biohacking, men power, like that whole thing right now that's going on. I don't even know other people that are doing it, but it's all about that. And it's just, to me, it's crazy. It's out of control. It's like you don't really trust and believe in the human body. Yeah.
Usually urine therapy is a part of it too.
It is. You see them posting about it. It's crazy. Like,
I think water is a better choice, but that's just me.
I think it's a way better choice. The last thing I want to do is piss in a cup and drink it.
So you mentioned hormones, and I just interviewed, I'm sure you're familiar, Georgi Dinkoff. He's been in the peak community like 10 years more or something. Good friends of Danny. And he was talking about progesterone, pregnenolone, and DHEA. And I know some people in the community take that like candy, but they're made from cholesterol, right? So yeah.
Probably makes his living.
Did you ever take like a lot of progesterone? Because it's like from what Georgie said, with progesterone and pregnenolone especially, they upregulate your body's own production. So they could be good as you're starting out, I guess, to like, what are your thoughts on that?
The way I look at it, and he can say what he wants to say, and that's great. I think I'm not saying what he's saying is wrong, because we all have our views, right? You can look at what it says in a book or biochemically, and you can look at it from the point of view of life, right? So, and there's a few examples of this. And the first that comes to mind, like, and not a lot of people obviously study it, but I work with a lot of guys and I have, so I study it, is if you look at like testosterone, right? Testosterone replacement steroids. So certain steroids like DHEA, it's a steroid, and it has specific metabolites that convert in progesterone. So when people take that steroid, they get a symptom they call DHEA. Why? Because, and I'm simplifying this, there's a lot of progesterone that is created from taking it, right? So they'll stack it with like a testosterone so they don't get that. Same thing in real life. If you don't want your penis to work, take progesterone, right? Now, can it be beneficial in small doses to people with like prostate issues? Sure, because usually it has to do with estrogen, but it's still risky because you're still going to get those symptoms, even in small doses. So I believe, based on not my personal experience, client personal experience, that most men, well, all men, should not be taking progesterone.
I think they say stack it with DHEA or something if you're going to take it, because that balances it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to balance it, why stack it?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
On the other side of it, DHEA. It's something I used to recommend a ton back in the day when I used to do adrenal tests, and I took it myself and did it regulate adrenal labs? Sure. But one thing I noticed from using it was people, of course you feel better, right? It's a youth hormone. The problem is I noticed as people got more and more chaotic and stressed and sick, I saw more conversion of that to estrogen. And all you have to do is look at the biochemical pathways. So that's what I saw in a lot of people, especially women. So it's not something I personally recommend for any females. I haven't used it with men in probably 15 years. So it's just not a bioidentical hormone that we use or recommend. Now, if someone's on testosterone replacement therapy, a lot of the times your body stops producing pregnenolone in the testes, etc. So you might, not always, might supplement with small amounts of pregnenolone and or DHEA. So there's always some cases. Pregnenolone, it's kind of hit or miss for me. I've honestly never seen it truly work to the point where someone's like, yeah, it's working, and we see it metabolically working. Do some people feel better when they take it? They feel wired, they feel energetic. Sure, it's going to make you feel like that. Did I see it affect people's sleep, like ability to sleep and fall asleep at night? Yeah. So what I kind of found is the same thing. The more chaotic people were, I found that they were converting that pregnenolone to cortisol. So I'm really cautious with using it. Can it help regulate cholesterol levels, etc.? Sure. But regulating thyroid health can do that even more, right? Because it has much of a larger correlation. So I'm not a huge fan of any of those. Now, do I use progesterone with women when they're in menopause if they need it? Sure. Do I use DHEA with women? Never. Do I use pregnenolone with some women here and there? Sure, but it's been a long time. Same thing with men. So that's my take on it. I would never, ever, ever recommend a male to take progesterone unless they want to have a flaccid female.
Okay, I love that. I love that explanation. Yeah, I love to use bookstores, and I picked up this book a couple years ago, Smart Drugs 2. And that's kind of a red flag, but they had a whole section. They had a whole section on pregnenolone, and it's interesting. They were saying it works like a super memory booster.
Yeah.
I guess in rats they did like it boosted memory recall 100 times or something, but they have like a great chart on converting cholesterol into all the steroid hormones that I thought was kind of cool. And yeah, it all starts with cholesterol. And so I think that's like the main point. Like I was under eating meat for so many years, especially flipping back, I think for spiritual reasons, back and forth to not eating meat. Yeah. And now I'm up to like a pound a day, every day consistently. And I feel better than ever. And I really credit it mostly to that, to good grass-fed local red meat,
But you're going to die of cancer though. So
sometimes I overcook it. Yeah.
I can feel your aura. You're definitely dying. I'm just kidding. Yeah. So here's the thing. It's like, I always go backwards. That makes sense. I always look up. So it's like, I have a large intestine issue. Great. Let's go backwards. Right. Because the GI system is a top-down system. But so is the whole body, right? So when you look at cholesterol, what do we need to convert that? Broda Barnes said it the best, right? Is that high cholesterol is a marker for hypothyroidism. Why? Because we need thyroid hormone to convert it. If you fill a tub with water and you don't pull the plug, cholesterol is going to keep going up. Why? Because the body's stressed. It's a sign. It's the environment. Because we need cholesterol for stress. The problem is if the marker's not there to free that up and pull the plug so we can use it, it's going to keep building up, especially if we're not changing our environment, how we're eating, how we're living. So you need thyroid hormone for that process. It's not like, oh, you have low DHEA and pregnenolone, take more. That'd be like looking at the bottom of a stream and saying there's trash. Let me just keep taking the trash out. You're going to be taking trash out every day, every minute, every hour. Go upstream. Where's the trash coming from? So that's just how I look at the human body. Not saying what they're doing is wrong. I think there's many ways to skin a cat. We're all trying to cut through the same process. We're all trying to help people. And I know people take it offensively sometimes, but just realize I'm just sharing what I do. And I'm not saying what anyone's doing wrong,
I love it. And you also need vitamin A, right? It's like vitamin A and thyroid. Are those the two major things to convert cholesterol?
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Only a few more. Maybe magnesium.
Yeah.
It's usually involved in everything.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it probably is. I always say this, like if you're getting a variety of food, like metabolic foods, you don't have to worry about that stuff because you're going to get what you need. And the first thing is, like, and you've said it before, you studied the work of Hans Selye, like most, actually all, diseases are derived from stress. Right? That's where we're at right now. So if you have a cholesterol issue, a vitamin A issue, etc., you can chase that. But the problem is you have to put the fire out first. And stress is not a thing. Right? Because you could say, oh, I could say this stresses me out. And you're like, it doesn't stress me out. It's not a thing, right? Stress is a physiological reaction from the brain to the rest of the body, simplified, right? It's a physiological reaction. So how do we tap into that to change that? Because if you don't change your environment, you're not going to change anything. You can chase the vitamin A, chase the conversion, but guess what? What's causing the high cholesterol? The stress. Doesn't matter if you stub your toe, get in a fight, eat a Pop-Tart, whatever it may be. The body doesn't go, oh, you stub your toe, I'm going to do a different physiological reaction. No, stress is stress is stress, right? So it's all about environment. And that's kind of another key of what we're trying to do, because if we eat foods in a specific frequency, in a specific way to match our body, who we are as an individual, and meet our body's needs, what happens? We take the burden off the adrenals. And I'm simplifying all this so people can understand it. We put the fire out. Then that allows us to store energy. Then that allows us to use that stored energy to convert thyroid hormone, which is now used in your cells, your mitochondria, which is called cellular respiration, energy production. We produce ATP, CO2, and water. This is important because it allows us to keep that feedback loop going. We produce more energy, we produce more mitochondria, we become more metabolic, we produce more brown fat. The list goes on, right? Mm-hmm. Why is that important? Because the only way you can strengthen vagal tone, the vagal brake, or the balance in your autonomic nervous system, which is stress, is when you're producing energy. So if you're not producing energy, now you're going to have nervous system issues, stress issues, and you can chase it all day. Until you change that, nothing's going to heal.
Love it. And that's kind of the basis of your RTN approach right there that you just explained. And that's almost like your mantra. I hear you on Instagram repeating that over and over, and you need to for people to get it. Yeah. It's a simple concept, but I like how you kind of hammer in that idea, like take the burden off the adrenals, allow the liver to store glycogen, convert thyroid hormone, produce energy, more stress resilience, right?
100%. I mean, it's, I don't care if you have cancer, it doesn't matter. We're not saying we're curing cancer. I'm not saying I'm curing anything. Like, I'm not God. All I'm saying is, if you're human, everyone's human. If we support our body based on the human need, you're going to create a big enough foundation to really help yourself out. Then if you need specific cancer treatment or specific medication, like maybe you need a thyroid medication, that's fine, but support it. You can't just go, I feel horrible, I have a thyroid issue, I'm going to take a medication and think the medication is going to change you, but you haven't changed anything that's causing the thyroid problem. That's how we're trained to think about it. We're trying to help people work a way around it in based on what I just said to you. And I constantly say it because A, I want to say it so people understand it. It's that simple. B, based off our approach. B, we have a lot of new followers all the time. But I think it's important so people understand that it is that simple. And it really just comes down to eating food, metabolic foods frequently to create a foundation, because we're so far from that. I mean, I had a guy message me this morning and say, what diet should I do for the candida? Is it going to get in my blood and kill me? Should I take a medication? I said, no. You follow our work, you'll be fine over time, but it's like people think that candida is going to kill them.
I get that with parasites a lot. I'm sure you do too. Like, I think so there's always that think word. I think I have a parasite. What should I do? Yeah. It's like, well, you think you have one. Right?
Yeah. Well, it's easier to focus on a parasite and candida and SIBO and all these problems instead of looking in the mirror and saying, what am I doing wrong? What's my problem? How am I not supporting my body? Maybe working out first thing at 5 a.m. on an empty stomach is not supporting me. Maybe fasting for 6 hours in the morning is not supporting me. Maybe having coffee first thing in the morning is not supporting me. The list goes on. The problem is we don't want to change, but you have to really heal.
Yeah, I do consultations here and there, and since I'm about to move, I stopped. But I forget who I heard the concept from. I think it's a common one in the health field, the weakest link thing. Like, there's always a weakest link in your health. I think Danny Rod even brought that up too. And that's how I kind of work with clients. Like, I'll kind of break down their entire day. Like, okay, what's your average day? What do you eat for breakfast? Oh, I don't eat breakfast, or whatever. It's like, that's why I like your work, you and your work, because it's very personalized, and we get messages every day. Like, what do I do for this? And it's like, well, I don't know you. I don't know if you eat breakfast. I don't know how you live your life. If you're in a crappy relationship, on and on. It's like,
yeah, so. It's because people want that magic wand. It comes back to being lazy and scared, which is, of course, I mean, I forget who said it, but it's like, if we could just eliminate fear, most of us would heal, right? If we just got back to like saying, okay, I'm going to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's what healing is, right? We have to do that. But yeah, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And everyone's like, what should I eat before breakfast? And what should I eat at night for bed that's pro-thyroid? And I say, whatever is going to work for you long term, right? Because there's no meal that's pro-thyroid. It's what out of the group of foods that you try really supports you. But really go backwards. How you live during the day, how you breathe, how much me time you have, how much you get outside, what you eat, when you eat, all these things create the stage for sleep.
I love it. Yeah. And I think you eat a lot of like gluten-free stuff, like gluten-free toast, or I guess like graham cracker and yogurt, and that works for you, right? It might not work for another person. So exactly. It's like to find out. But
I also think it's defining your level of health. Mm-hmm. I come from a background where I grew up super healthy with my parents. My mother was a dietitian. She was a head of a weight loss clinic. I grew up in the weight loss clinic, and then I was strict bodybuilder, like 12 eggs a day and tons of boiled chicken and sweet potatoes. And like, I was, I could tiny fart in a room and I could like kill people, So that strict mentality, I don't like going back to, because then I lose the fun of food. Now, I'm not saying if people do it that it's wrong. So for me, my definition of health, and it makes me enjoy food, is having that gluten-free graham cracker occasionally with my yogurt, or having that piece of toast occasionally with my fruit and eggs. That allows me to create balance. It works for me and allows me to enjoy my food every day. And I think that is so important, because if we're not having fun doing it, what's the point of doing it?
Yeah, it's so easy to get kind of neurotic. I've been there, you've been there, where it's just like you're micromanaging your diet. It's like an obsession. I think lowering PUFA though is a pretty good thing for most people to do, because I see a lot of men, like especially men that have man boobs, a gut. They're drinking beer, they're eating Chick-fil-A, and they're eating a lot of bacon and pork and beer. All these estrogen increasers, right? So that's kind of like a common thing. I think
it's a principle, but lowering gluten foods and foods with lectin and but here's the thing. If you just focus on eating metabolic foods, it's like we always say, don't focus on what you don't have, focus on what you have. Don't focus on what you can't eat, focus on what you can eat. It's just a mindset switch. It's moving from the negative to the positive. And I think it's empowering and reinforcing for people. So if you focus on what you can eat and you focus on all the metabolic foods, you indirectly lower your unsaturated fats. That's much more enjoyable than saying, oh, I can't eat this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love that. Do you ever eat oats? I just got into like gluten-free oats. Those are really easy breakfast.
My wife does. She enjoys them. I do enjoy them, but they just don't work for me. Mm-hmm. I've always boiled it down to they're in the class of prolamines because they have avenins, right? Barley has, I think, hordeins. Rye has secalins, and gluten has gliadinins. Those are prolamines.
These are proteins?
I forget. I haven't talked about it for so long, but I think they're a set of proteins. Yeah. So I've always boiled it down to that. So anytime I have oats, my energy just crashes, and then I have some digestive stress like the next morning. So it's not a food that I utilize that often, or rarely ever at all. It just tanks my energy for the day. So not saying it won't work for someone else, right? It's just me. It's just
need enzymes and HCl.
Yeah, I need to come more.
Do you think most people are under eating protein Yeah.
I can say that with a certainty. I can show you the research. I can show you 20 years of law. Well, I can't show you that because my hard drive crashed the other day. Lost 20 years of everything.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. Talk about stress. So I can't show you the research, but I would say every single client we've talked to or worked with over the past 20 years, once we start establishing their baseline and look at their macros, they are under eating protein, especially women. They're getting 60, 70, 80 grams. Men that weigh 160 pounds are getting 100 grams of protein a day. Most people under eat protein. And the problem with this is, of course, we need protein for many things in the body, repair, regeneration, the basics, etc. Some energy production, liver support, etc. But just in a simplistic sense, if you don't get enough protein and you're in, because everyone thinks it's all about high carb, and it's not. People say, I'm going high carb, I'm gaining weight, I'm tired, I'm getting acne. It's because your carb to protein ratio is so off because you went high carb. So you have two choices. Drop your carbs a little so they create some balance with your protein ratio, or bring your protein up to balance out that carb ratio. Because if you just go high carb and your protein's low, you're on a high carb diet, right? You're on your way to getting hyperinsulinemia, high blood sugar, PCOS, the list goes on and on. So protein is so important. And I find with a lot of people, it's that one thing that creates that satiety throughout the day, right? And helps to balance out all the carbs they're eating. So we're not here to say that carbs are better than proteins and proteins are better than fat, etc. It's about finding that balance. And when I say that, I don't mean 33, 33, 33. It's different for everyone, but we have to find that ratio that works for everyone. Now, do I believe your carb grams could be greater than your protein grams, greater than your fat, etc.? Yes. Carbs are the more dominant, but it has to be balanced to create balance in your physiology. So yeah,
I love that. Yeah.
Most people are protein deficient because they think protein is in beans, or they think all they should eat is chicken.
It's true. I remember when I was fruitarian, I think it was at least 3 years. I was on this high,
Wow.
and I was doing the whole bit. I was rebounding. I was riding my bike, whatever. But it kind of
bouncing off the walls.
I was turning into durian rider. No, but the potassium and the fructose. I mean, that's why the fruitarian diet probably works for a little bit. People say, I've been on it 10 years. What are you talking about? It doesn't work. But it's like they'll bunk, right? It might take 15, 20 years, depending on the person's constitution. But because there's no protein there, even though it's, potassium has insulin-like effects and fructose is really easily digested, right? There's just zero protein in fruits.
I think we have to define what it means when people say it works. Mm-hmm. People base it on how they feel.
Right.
Most people cannot feel. They can't. I ask people to check in with me, tell you how you're feeling. What are you experiencing this week? I don't know what you mean. Like, people, we're taught not to feel, right, in our society. So for people to say it's working, that's a challenge. I think you have to look at body temperature and pulse. I think you have to look at some of their symptoms, right? Sometimes you have to look at blood work, right? And is it sustainable? And the problem is this, and I always say this, and maybe I just don't say it in a way that makes enough sense. I don't know. And I'm saying that, like, honestly, but you have all these diets. You have veganism, et cetera, fruitarian on the side. It's an extreme way of eating, right? It's extremist. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of negativity. On this end, you have keto, carnivore, paleo, whatever. It's extremist, etc. But somewhere in here, what do you have? You have human physiology. Okay? Balance. It's not extremist. It's not reductionistic. It's all about balance. So if you eat in a way to support human physiology, you won't have to chase it with diets. You won't have to go extreme one or 2 years and go the next. It's like putting gas in your car, right? You don't say, well, I'm going to try diesel today because I heard it makes my car run better. Your car's not going to work. You're not going to go, well, I'm going to try walking backwards all day today. Why? That's how I feel what diets are equivalent to. It's like, you're going to do keto. you're going against how the body works. Instead of walking forward all day, now you're walking backwards. And that's what you're asking your physiology to do. So you have to look at how the body works. If you go back to human physiology, it makes sense by what we're trying to teach people to do, because that's how the body works.
I love it. Yeah, I explain it as we're trying to run on a backup system. And I always like your thing. You say the liver doesn't store glycogen for shits and giggles, right? It's for a reason. And so people forget that. Like, I don't know. It's like they're running through their muscle glycogen, running through their liver glycogen as they sleep. And then they're just fasting until dinner every day. It's like, you're going to bonk. I mean, I did that experiment last year, 1 hour eating window.
Yeah. I just think they get so wrapped up in the belief system, they just don't want to admit it. And at the same time, they're so afraid of carbs, because the second they have carbs, they gain weight.
Yeah.
Right? It goes back to everything I said at the beginning. It's not carbs' fault. Stop eating carbs. It's your physiology's inability to digest, assimilate, et cetera, process those carbs coming in.
And adrenaline and cortisol, that's another missing piece. I know we're almost out of time, but just wanted to hit on those. Because I think I've heard some people in the keto carnivore people say that's good. I've heard them say, meat doesn't increase cortisol and all these things. And they're always quoting studies and stuff. But I like what you said about going back to human physiology. Like I have Guyton's book I still have to dig into, but medical physiology. But you don't have to see a study for these basic things that if you restrict the primary fuel of the body, which is sugar, then you will have an increase in adrenaline and cortisol, right?
Right. So the problem is none of these things are bad. Estrogen is not bad. Cortisol is not bad. If it was bad and we didn't have them, we wouldn't be alive. We wouldn't be male. We wouldn't be female. It's the balance and the ratio between specific hormones, etc., that allow us to thrive. So cortisol isn't bad. If you didn't have cortisol, when you missed a meal, you slept at night, or you got in a fight, or you fell down a rocky cliff, you wouldn't live. It's there for a reason. But the example I give is if you go on a long hike, that's like you getting on a roller coaster. You come back from the hike, you rest, you drink water, you eat food, you recover, you sit down, right? Now you're getting off the roller coaster. You're taking your body into that stress state, the general adaptation syndrome, and now you're coming back down to homeostasis so you can recover, right? Adrenaline, cortisol go up to help you a little bit throughout that. That's why they're there. They're supportive. The problem is most people every day, because of the way they're living, eating, whatever it may be, they're getting on in training, they're getting on the roller coaster, and they're never getting off. Right? Over time, it's going to wear on you. Just think about getting on a roller coaster hour after hour, day after day, and how that's going to feel. Right? That's why people feel the way they feel, because they're still trying to take expensive supplements or eat the keto diet, whatever it may be, but they're still on the roller coaster. And that's why they truly don't heal over time. So many people say, I feel great on keto and I have Hashimoto's. And I'll say, you still have Hashimoto's? You're still on the roller coaster, right? You can feel great. But at the same time, they say, well, I'm constipated and I have PMS and, the list goes on. Is it really working? It's not. You might feel better. That doesn't mean it's working.
I love that. Are you open for a quick Q&A, like rapid fire?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. There's just 5 questions here. I just want to get through them. This first one's kind of complex. Does eating to increase CO2 at rest, hence not breathing fast, cause a counterproductive state when it comes to too much CO2 retention or a chronic overacidic state? Does that make sense?
Whoa. So if you're eating
to increase CO2 at rest, does it cause a counterproductive state when it comes to too much? I guess, can you have too much CO2 retention?
Yeah, that happens with sleep apnea. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's common with sleep apnea. They hold their breath. So a breath technique would be a breath hold at the end of an exhale. And for some people, that allows you to retain CO2. So it's a very parasympathetic way of breathing. But you're not eating to support CO2 production at rest. You're eating to support your cells all the time. Right? So when you move, your body's way of compensating for that excess CO2 production is Obviously, mouth breathing, not at rest, because you should be nose breathing. You're not producing excess amounts of CO2, right? So it's more activity that will do that. So if you start running, now you're in third, fourth, or fifth gear. You're going to breathe through your mouth. You have to, because you're tapping into different energy systems. You're producing excess CO2. So you mouth breathe to get rid of some of it. The problem is we come back to rest and most people are still mouth breathing. And that's a problem. We should be nose breathing to kind of create a balance between oxygen and CO2, because we need that CO2 to take oxygen off hemoglobin to feed our cells. So you're not eating to support CO2 at rest. You're eating to support energy production in your cells all the time. And when you do that, you help create balance when you're moving. But at the same time, it's your job to remind yourself that if you go into fifth gear with movement, that you should come back to first gear afterwards with nose breathing.
Love it.
That answers that question, but it's confusing.
No, that was great. Best breakfast for thyroid health, the one that works for them, right?
The one that works for you. Of course, a meal that has protein and carbs that's metabolic, whether it be eggs or any type of protein. Anything that has eyes is protein. A plant's not protein. An animal is protein, right? A carb, whether it be a squash, a root, or a fruit. But even like I tell people, it's finding that intensity. Some people say, well, I still want to have toast in the morning. Great. Balance it out with some fruit and eggs, right? To bring in more fructose. So it's really finding the meal that works for you within an amount of time in the morning that allows you to create a good frequency during the day. Food frequency creates efficiency in how you feel, helps to regulate how you feel, and supports metabolic health via body temperature and pulse. That's the best breakfast for you.
I love it. And I think people are just confused. Like they want meal plans. Like give me 10 sample meals I could try.
No.
And
the worst you could do.
Yeah.
I say to you, hey, you should have eggs and fruit in the morning. That might not work for you, but it's going to work for Joe. And I'm just making that up. So it's very personalized, and the process is very scientific. But when we come into real life, there's a lot of variables that we don't know about and you don't know about, or you're choosing to ignore, like your childhood or trauma or belief systems or stress. So you have to do a little bit of trial and error and feel. That's the hard part.
I love it. Yeah, that's a really cool part of your work. Getting people back to feeling that, getting that biofeedback, that natural system. Yeah. Any advice for acne that seems to be caused by sugar? Had it 26 years.
I would say probably you're going too fast with your carb intake, and you need to slow down and make sure you're in log to make sure you're getting enough protein in or fat to balance that out, right? So it's hard to say because we kind of go through a process to get there. But I would say based on your symptoms, you're taking in too much carb. Now, you might have to start a place where you're not getting a lot of carb. You could be getting 50 carbs a day, but that's where you need to meet your body at. To allow your body to become more adaptable. So over time, slowly, you can increase the carbs. Healing isn't a race. It's not a destination. It's a journey. So you have to start here and go slow and work up. The problem is everyone goes from no carbs to tons. The body can't process that because you've trained it not to. And when you have symptoms like that, you've got to cut it back, go slow, and realize that you have to go slowly through the healing process. Most people I start with don't start with 200 grams of carbs a day. Some start with 50 and we slowly work our way up, but it's getting them back to that place. You're probably moving too fast.
I love it. Yeah. Hold off on the homemade gummy bears. I'm sure you saw that.
Yeah.
I mean, those...
I think those are great. I think they're great when you travel, if you're going on a bike ride, et cetera, et cetera. But most people want to wake up and just eat them and say, oh, why aren't they working?
Gummy bears for breakfast. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I don't know if this is a troll. Ask him about orange juice. I already know your thoughts, but
I know a lot of the industry thinks it's a great tool and it's like this magic powder that's going to heal people. I don't look at it like that. I think you can get a lot of magnesium and other minerals from other foods. But at the same time, it's a quick, easy food with a lot of fructose. But what I've noticed from working with people with 20 years, it's not sustainable. It's almost like throwing lighter fluid on a fire versus throwing in a log. So with my clients, I am more of a fan of using solid food and dense food to create that long-term sustainable burn so we can store energy versus just that. Yeah.
I like it. Maybe in between meals or before a meal or something like that, but not as a meal. Right? What happens when PUFA is released from the tissues? How do you know if you're detoxing PUFA?
I think if you're eating a higher saturated fat, lower unsaturated fat, you're detoxing. But the point is you have to regulate your blood sugar so your body doesn't break down your tissues and release those fatty acids into the bloodstream, which affects your thyroid, your cells, etc. So if you balance your blood sugar with doing that, you'll be fine. So you can't just go, I'm going to drop unsaturated fats and not focus on food and frequency throughout the day, because if you do, then it could be affecting you negatively.
I love it. And this is just a quick thing before we wrap up here. With thyroid hormone, something that I think a lot of people are confused about is they think it's just produced in the thyroid and that's it. But it's mostly converted in the liver, and then conversion is just the first step, right? You still have to transport it and utilize it. And that transport and utilization can be stopped by PUFA, right?
It can.
Other things, stress.
Again, birth control pill, etc. So the thyroid produces it. Most people don't have thyroid problems. I would say 99% of people don't, unless they don't have a thyroid. Your thyroid's still producing it. You're just not converting it. You're not supporting your body to convert it. And there's 6 different ways. We've actually done a Facebook Live on this, but so it's about supporting it. And once you support it, it's also making sure that it's getting to the cell. So yeah, unsaturated fats, estrogen, those things have a huge effect on those receptor sites and binding factors.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll put your info at the outro here. So thanks for coming on, Josh. That was awesome. And I think you could probably do a few more, because there's still subjects that your work is so deep, and you've been studying this, 20 years or just about. So you have a lot of stuff.
You know, in the beginning, it was complex, and I made it complex because I love physiology. But over the years, and I want to say as I evolved or maybe got a little bit older, I mean, I turned 44 this month. I don't feel 44, but I've got to the place where it's like in my head, it's complex, but I try to make it as simplistic as possible for people to understand. So, you know, if you want to check out our work, I say our work because my wife does the same work as well. You can go to our website at eastwesthealing.com. Our Facebook page is East West Healing. Our YouTube page is East West Healing. Our Instagram is Real Food Gangsters. So you can check those out.
Awesome. Yeah, I highly recommend people go to your Instagram, because you put out so much free content. Every Wednesday you have a Q&A, right?
I was doing that for a while, but I stopped just because it gets a little bit redundant. I get over and over again, so I stopped. I'll probably start it up again at some point for sure.
Probably got like 10 Candida questions every Wednesday, right? Awesome, Josh. Well, yeah, hang on and we'll close out the show. Thanks again for coming on.
I really appreciate it.
Well, that's a wrap for today's show. Hope you guys enjoyed that. If you're not following Josh Rubin, especially on Instagram, that's where he posts a lot of content on his stories, definitely do that. It's Real Food Gangsters, and it's so much free information. And you can pay for consultations with him, or you can pay for his group coaching. But even just to get started with the basics, because most people are missing these foundational ideas, really awesome stuff. And it's something that you feel. I mean, he's getting insane results with his clients of just turnarounds that are very quick. And not all of them are quick, of course. A lot of them take time. But he's getting a lot of people that are recovering from a vegan diet, a carnivore diet, a keto diet, where they just bonk and they faint, they hit the wall, they can't perform, their libido tanks, their mood tanks, their energy tanks, they just crash. And that's what happens on extreme fad diets. You crash because they're not long-term health, short-term health that you gain from a diet. Stay away from diets. Diets are not necessary at all. You can experiment with foods and experiment to see what foods work for you. but we don't need to go vegan or vegetarian or carnivore or liquidarian or breatharian, whatever kind of diet someone wants to try. Just get back to balance. And that's where health is. So he's also on eastwesthealing.com. He's on Facebook. Definitely recommend his YouTube channel. That would be really the place to start if you want to deep dive into his work. He has some awesome older videos with Jeannie where they just sit down for a half hour and cover different topics. I really like that series. And just all of his videos are awesome, even the older ones. It's all still relevant today. And as always, if you want to support my work, you can go to matt-blackburn.com. That's all my recommended products that I personally use and I've benefited from. And I look at it kind of like having a tool chest. You don't need all of it, but the more of it you have, whenever you're experiencing different conditions or if someone visits you and they get ill, you can help them out a little bit. That's been my personal experience with having these tools. And of course, find your weakest link, as we talked about in the interview. Find what your weakest link is. Maybe it's neck pain. So look into the Neck Savior that I have on my website. Or maybe it's water. Most likely it is. I would say 99.9% of people's weakest link is just simply water. And not just drinking, but bathing. Are you drinking bicarbonate-rich, acid-free, pharmaceutical-free water? Probably not. Are you bathing in water that is clean? And that's a really relative term that means different things for different people. Clean to me means that it's stripped of a lot of different contaminants with perhaps 3 different types of filtration media, HEDEA 55, 85, and SIR 900. And that's a filter that I have on my website that I personally use and love. And I also have a brand called Mitolife, and that can be found at mitolife.co. I have 5 products: a systemic enzyme called Dissolvedol, a multiple digestive enzyme called Digestidol, a gluten enzyme product, and a Shilajit tablets, which are relatively new, and vitamin E extract, which is soy-free. It's derived from non-genetically modified sunflower oil, which is incredible. I've experienced huge benefits, especially from megadosing vitamin E. Not recommending it, but if you do the research on what vitamin E has been used for, especially in Canada with Dr. Schutt, high doses, it's pretty incredible. And on my website, I wrote pretty much a dissertation about vitamin E and all of the benefits they can have. And if you're detoxifying polyunsaturated fatty acids, it's incredible. I actually just saw my friend Tim Burzens of Amplified Vitality. He uploaded a 30-minute video on PUFA hangover. And he made a lot of really interesting philosophical connections about omega-3s and how they're toxic, especially in the animal kingdom on an environmental level, and how it actually creates a hangover effect, because these aldehydes are very similar that you get from drinking beer or wine. The breakdown products of PUFA make you drunk, and it's actually a long-term effect that takes years. In the video, I think he says 2 to 3 years. I've heard 4 years up to. So this isn't just a detox it in a month kind of deal. I personally, not making recommendations here, my personal protocol for PUFA detox is at least minimum 400 IUs of vitamin E every day to balance out all of the PUFA extracts that I took. I used to take fish oil, krill oil. I was wrapped up in the whole biohacking thing and the benefits of these quote unquote essential, they're not, essential fatty acids. So vitamin E is the antidote. It is what reverses the damage that polyunsaturated fats, specifically DHEA, causes. So it's incredible. And very soon here, I'll have a whole show just on supplements. Maybe I'll go through my whole website and just break down each product and just my philosophy on supplements, because people think taking pills is unnecessary, especially if you're healthy. Well, you know what else is unnecessary? Acid rain. The whole planet has a smoke ring around it. You know what else is unnecessary? The canola oil that we were raised on for our entire life. 20 years. Remember what you ate in high school? Going out with your friends, burritos, all that stuff, it's still in you. And so I think taking measures to reverse the damage that we caused, our parents knew what they knew, they did their best, but we need tools, that's for sure. And personally, I believe 1000% that everyone needs to be on certain supplements, specifically magnesium bicarbonate, shilajit, systemic enzymes to break down the fibrosis from the NPK fertilizer grown food that causes scar tissue damage, liver fibrosis damage from the polyunsaturated fats, which systemic enzymes actually help to reverse, and vitamin E, which helps to restore liver function and overall tissue function, because vitamin E allows oxygen to enter the cell. And without oxygen, we have cell damage, tissue death, because the cells cannot generate energy. No oxygen, no energy. If there's PUFA, there's no oxygen. If there's vitamin E in the tissue, then there's oxygen. And remember that the liver is what's saturated with vitamin E the most. So these fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, they're stored in the liver. So you need to saturate the liver with vitamin E first before it goes to what's called peripheral tissues, which is your skin to protect from UV damage, which you can get skin damage from consuming omega-3 DHEA. It actually exacerbates it. And so that's what age spots are. Lipofuscin, ceroid pigment. There's 70 different forms. Most people have it, can see it on the skin. And for each spot on the skin, there's 10,000 to 100,000 beneath the surface. If you look at anyone that eats a lot of seafood and gets a lot of sunlight exposure, they're full of these pigments. And these pigments are oxygen sinks, and they complex with iron. So they starve the tissues of oxygen systemically, and they complex with iron that we're all bathing in and drinking for our entire life, and that's in the produce, and creates a cancer-causing pigment called lipofuscin. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I had a great episode with Adam Bergstrom called The Unsaturated Fat Conspiracy, and especially the second interview, we also go a little deeper into it. So the first two Adam Bergstrom interviews, highly recommend, and really any of his work. He's really delved into the lipofuscin subject pretty deep. So today's quote is by Hans Selye. "The fairest thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion which stands at the cradle of true science. He who knows it not, and can no longer wonder, no longer feel amazement, is as good as dead. We all had this priceless talent when we were young, but as time goes by, many of us lose it. The true scientist never loses the faculty of amazement. It is the essence of his being."